some years, so I've been raised in a world of show and tell. So I'm going to start with show and tell. This is my Navy crew coach ball cap from when I got to go back to the Naval Academy and coach the women's novice crew team there from 1990 to 1992. And this ball cap has a lot of great memories associated with it. And when the days of flying on board the space shuttle, NASA would come to you and say, you can have 2 personal items with you on board the spacecraft, where you can actually put them in your own locker and have access to them. So of course, this had to go with me on my very first flight to space. There will be more of this story. Just a kind of 35-year-old picture. I was a little later in life before the light bulb went on. I was 10. So all you smart girls in the room will now be able to figure out how old I am. Please don't raise your hand and yell it out. But way back in July 1969, I was 10 years old. And if you know your history, that was the first time that NASA decided to try and actually land on the moon. And as a 10-year-old, I remember lying on the floor in front of our family's black and white television, because in July 1969, we had not entered the world of color television yet in my household. And I was hooked. I was mesmerized by what I saw. Just something about Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin kind of bouncing along the lunar surface for the first time. I could not take my eyes off the screen. Now this part of the story I don't necessarily remember, but my mother loves to tell the story. Apparently lying there on my stomach, I kept inching closer and closer and closer to the television. That part I don't remember. I do remember, however, looking around at the rest of my family and proclaiming as a 10-year-old, that's what I'm going to do when I grow up. I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to fly in space. Well, that's the beauty of being a kid. You can have wild dreams like that, and you don't think twice about it. And I was a 10-year-old girl in July 1969. NASA had never selected a woman to be an astronaut, so this was a pretty wild dream. But I was hooked, and I was possessed, and I really wanted to be an astronaut. So growing up in a Navy family, it was pretty easy to just go with the family business, which my mother's father did and my father did, which was go to the Naval Academy, learn how to fly. So lo and behold, you like that picture, Mike? Young steely-eyed midshipman. That was long ago. So I was in the second class of women to go to the United States Naval Academy. Showed up there in July of 1977. Still very much possessed by that dream of becoming an astronaut. And I finished high school in Alexandria, Virginia. So I had at least heard of the sport of crew, because the high schools there actually had crew teams. They rode on the Potomac River. So one day during my very first summer at the Naval Academy, one of my female classmates came up to me and said, I want to start a crew team. I said, well, I've heard of the sport. That sounds like fun. The two of us actually went to the men's crew coach and said, we'd like to start a women's crew team. I think he didn't think we could pull it off. He said, well, if you can find enough women to row, I'll find you a coach. So by the time the school year started, we had found enough women to row. We had at least 8-person shells worth. He did find us a coach, and that started my association with crew. Life at the Naval Academy, I think Coach Matson would agree with this, can be very hard. And the key, I think, to success there is finding a support system. It's a difficult place to make it through on your own. You just need to find strength in numbers. So the crew team became that for me. There I am in the bow, like the haircut. Lesson to you all. When your roommates dare you to go change your hairstyle, think carefully about it. Make sure you actually like it. Those were my perm days. But there I am in the bow of the boat. This picture was actually taken from my 3rd year there at the Naval Academy. We're rowing in what's called the Dadville Regatta. So basically our championship regatta. And we ended up taking 3rd place. very proud day on the water. And so crew definitely became my support system. But it became much more than that. It really gave me some skills that I built the rest of my adult life on. Focus. Very much you have to focus in that boat. Determination, discipline. Crew is unlike any other sport. How many of you play soccer? Or basketball? Or even volleyball? You know, in those sports, particularly in basketball, the play may not be called for you. It may be called for another player. You're still out on the court, but you're not a prominent part of that particular play. Not so in a crew shell. Every stroke during a race, you're involved in. From start to finish of a race, you are part of that team. There is no slacking off. Everybody rows together. And so that you have to discipline yourself. And that's one of the things you really learn. Every stroke, maximum effort, give it my all. To persevere throughout that very grueling race. And that's one of the most valuable lessons I think I learned and translate from the sport of crew to my pursuit of my astronaut dream. Was that to be good at something, to become successful, takes a lot of work over a long period of time. And that's, I think, one of the keys to success for all of you as you get older and you start pursuing life after high school, whatever you want to do as an adult. Have that perspective, that it's going to take a lot of hard work over a period of time for you to get better and to become successful. So it very much is about the world of delayed gratification. And I'll talk some more about that later. I think another lesson I learned in the Naval Academy that was often reinforced by the crew team is to be able to laugh at yourself every so often. You might find yourself in a particular situation that's really hard, uncomfortable, difficult to deal with. And if you have the ability to kind of step back, almost out of your body and just look at that situation and be able to laugh at yourself, that is a great survival skill. So I'll tell a story that is still very prominent in my memories. Any of you read the book, Boys in the Boat? Any of you heard of pocock shells? For the younger folks in the room, you're not going to understand that. For those of you who have rowed, I had the distinct pleasure of rowing one of the wooden pocock shells. That's how old I am. So life at the Naval Academy meant you were a rough water rower. We often had very windy days, and so we'd have high waves on our Severn River, and we couldn't go out there to row. But I had a crew coach who was very bound and determined. So one day he decided that we were going to go row on one of the creeks that was located about a mile plus outside of one of the gates of the Naval Academy, Gate 8, Weeds Creek. So he decided we were going to carry the wooden shell down to the creek, along with all the wooden oars. That was one of those situations where I'm like, oh my gosh, to survive this, I just need to be able to laugh at the absurdity of this. And then we had like 12 women trying to carry the shells at a time. We rotate people in and out because it was very, very heavy. And I'm not a very tall person, and everybody else in the shell was taller than I am. So they had the boat up here on their shoulders. I was doing a constant bench press, overhead press, the whole way down to the creek. We rowed, it was exhausting practice, and then we realized we had to walk the crew shells back. And probably the hardest practice that I've ever done in my life. But boy, it really developed that sense of humor, like just laugh at the situation, you'll make it through, and persevere. But probably the thing that I learned from crew that I've really built my professional life on is that teamwork aspect. Like I said before, you're all in the shell together. Throughout the race, every stroke you're participating in. And it's a grueling activity, really a lot of hard work. You know, be in the best shape of your life. And to do well, you also have to trust your crewmates, that they're in that with you together. And we're all going to pull as hard as we can to do as well as possible as we row that race. Either a 3-mile-long race or a 2,000-meter sprint, really a long distance, but we call it a sprint. So that teamwork. trusting your teamwork, trusting the other people on your team. That is what, like I said, I built my career on. Once I graduated, I got to learn how to fly, learn how to fly helicopters, talk about that was my next team, flying with the people on board my helicopter, oftentimes in very demanding environments. We had to function well as a team. So I drew from what I had learned in crew. I learned to work with them, I learned to trust them. But sometimes we feel in pretty interesting situations. Daytime flying, easy, landing on a ship during the day, not so hard. Trying to land on the back of a ship at night, terrifying. And you had to work with your crewmates. You had to trust that they had your back. They were going to work with you and make a good decision to keep you safe. So back to the delayed gratification. Got to arrive down here in Houston, Texas in 1992. So the dream was starting to come true. I had an opportunity to ultimately fly on board the space shuttle 4 times. And the pursuit of my dream took about 25 years to come true. So that's where I drew on that delayed gratification. That working hard to get better, that eventually it would pay off. And I was back to teamwork again. As you saw in those previous pictures, the official photos of the cruise I was on, it's all about the team. You have a mission, you work together as a team to get it done. Hours and hours spent in the simulator, hours and hours spent training, more than delayed gratification, seeing a theme, before you finally have an opportunity to start getting into the nuts and bolts of your training. Here is how astronauts actually train for a spacewalk when they have an opportunity to go outside of the spacecraft, put on some special goggles that give you virtual reality view of the space station. I used to fly the robotic arm, so I often had a spacewalker on the end of my arm. So we were a team. We had to work together. We had to figure out how to communicate. Because one of the fun things about being up in space is you don't feel gravity. So there's not really an up, there's not really a down. You can decide what up is. Myself and the spacewalker, we had to mutually decide on what up was. So we could figure out how to work together and communicate.